I'm Katty Kay. Here are the headlines. The Democrats' race for the White House kicks off right now with the Iowa caucus. It's the first big test for the remaining candidates.
And I'm Kasia Madeira in London. Also coming up here on Newsday, forced medical care and people held down to be sprayed with disinfectant. China adopts extreme measures to tackle the spread of the coronavirus.
Scenes like those now can be found right across social media, and they're really fueling the sense of anxiety and fear about the coronavirus that is spreading right around the world.
A setback in the fight against AIDS, as scientists say an experimental vaccine against HIV does not work. And we have a special report from the Himalayas on how vital these yaks are to life in the mountains.
This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Welcome to this BBC News special programme live from the Iowa caucuses in Des Moines. I am Katty Kay. With me is Christian Fraser, and we'll be bringing you all of the results from this first contest of the Democrats' race to the White House. This is the first time that the Democratic Party contenders are really up against each other in a form of voting. And out of tonight, there will be winners and there will be losers. We'll bring you, of course, all of the results as we get them. We expect that in about an hour and a half, 2 hours, we'll start getting some of the results. But it's an important moment for the Democrats because it's really the first time that voters get to say, we like you, we don't like you, we don't like you. So it's a chance for things to get sorted out a bit. Big field.
Big field, 1,600 caucuses around Iowa. Small rural state, around 3 million people, and as you've been saying to me all week, it's important not because it's necessarily the most important state around the country. It's important because it's first. It's going to give us an indication of what these candidates can expect over the next 3 or 4 big races, you know, all the way to Super Tuesday in March. And when you look at the state, predominantly white, so it doesn't look like most other states as well, rural, as we say, and in around 2 hours' time, we'll start to get some results through here on the big screen. It will tell us where these candidates are going to go over the next few weeks.
Our North America editor, John Sopel, has been looking at the state of the race.
Just up the road from the state capital, Des Moines, is the John Wayne Museum, celebrating Iowa's most famous son. And like a Western, politics is always looking for the hero to ride into town to the rescue. The early favourite to win the Democratic Party nomination was Joe Biden, but he's not exactly fizzing with high energy.
We can't turn 4 years of Donald Trump into an aberration, historical aberration, but 8 years he'll change the country in a way we can't tolerate. We need you, we need you, we need you.
Much more than the Republicans, Democrats have tended to go for the bright new thing. Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, John F. Kennedy. Not this time round. Joe Biden is 77 years old, Bernie Sanders 78. But that's where the similarities end.
Polls suggest the socialist firebrand, Bernie Sanders, is the other front runner. He's way to the left of anyone who's ever been the Democratic standard bearer.
It is absolutely imperative for the future of this country that we defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country.
But he has momentum and passionate young supporters.
He wants to take care of our planet, and if we don't do that, then there's not going to be a planet left for us to live on when I'm older.
He's really passionate about the issues that we are passionate about, and he's the one that's really going to fight for this stuff because he's been fighting for so long.
But traditional Democrats believe he's unelectable in a country where the centre of political gravity is much further to the right.
Do you think America would vote for someone as left-wing as Bernie Sanders?
No.
No. No way.
He's not talking about things he's accomplished. He's got lots of great plans that I don't know are realistic.
I don't think he's going to have the appeal to be able to expand the base, to bring in moderates.
Next stop after Iowa will be New Hampshire. But whoever wins the Democratic nomination, further down the tracks, Donald Trump will be waiting. And beating him will be a tough fight and an ugly one. John Sopel, BBC News, Des Moines, Iowa.
And that is the Democrats' main concern, isn't it? Beating Donald Trump.
Yeah, Iowa doesn't always pick the winner in November, but they are terrified, these Democrats, of picking the loser this time around. It is all about electability. It's important to say, just as we said off tonight, that they're not putting crosses on a piece of paper. So in Iowa, they caucus. What does that mean? Well, there are people gathering in libraries, in churches, in public spaces up and down the state at the moment. And when they go into those rooms, they're going to be given their first preference. So they will have all the candidates in front of them. They go and stand in an area.
Not the actual candidates.
Not the actual candidates. The names of the candidates. And they go to the part of the room where they want to go, their first preference. They have to get to 15% of the people that are in the room, these candidates, to be viable. That's the main point, isn't it? This is the first round. And then if their candidate is not viable, then they have two choices. Either they can move to one of the other candidates that is viable, or they can try and pull supporters from other non-viable candidates to them in order to be viable themselves. So there's an awful lot of horse trading that goes on.
Somebody once described it to me as a very political cocktail party without the cocktails. There might be cookies and milk, but that's about it. Mixed with a strategic, tough game of risk, and that's the horse trading part. We decided that we wanted to try and have an understanding of caucuses better, so we went and saw a veteran caucus organiser, Tom Fay. He talked us all through it.
So we've got Sam here, our lovely producer. Say hello to Sam. And we've got Tom and Caddy and me, right? And I'm looking pretty viable. Okay, I've got 4 seats. Sam, you're looking pretty hopeless over there. You've got 1 seat. Tom, you may be viable. You've got 3 seats. Let's say you're viable, okay?
Yeah.
But Cathy and Sam are in the wind.
What do we do?
Is this the bit where I start saying, come on to me, I've got Ben and Jerry's.
Well, or is this the bit where I say to Sam, look, Sam, you're not viable, but if you join me, the two of us together, we could be viable.
Absolutely.
You come to me, Sam. Don't go to him. He's already fine.
Yeah, but I'm going to the White House. So why don't you come over here?
But we are more aligned on policy, Sam. You like what I do.
I think you should come to us for sure. We are right on all the issues that are important to America.
I'm not picking between parents. I'm going with Tom.
Thank you so much. You made a wise decision.
So this means that I'm left, Tom, and I'm not viable.
I know, and
so it's just the two of you groups now.
You know, you need to think about long and hard which candidate's the best candidate for your
Well, obviously,
idea.
that's an easy choice.
It's about
electability.
Where are you going?
See, now
It's
we're more
about
powerful
team
than
spirit.
you. I think the key to this is it shows a real, it proves to the public in Iowa and across the country which candidate has the best organization for grassroots politics. And that's where it's at, shoe leather on the ground. And you can't beat the Iowa caucus for that.
So that's how it works. 2 important rule changes this time. If you go to a candidate that is viable, you are locked into that candidate. You can't move to another one in the room, and only 2 rounds this time. So there will be a second round of alignment, as they call it, and that's it. So there's going to be some interesting results tonight. We'll get the popular vote, but we'll also get how many delegates these candidates are getting. You'll see it as a percentage later on the evening in this room on that big screen. So let's go to one of the top-tier candidates, Joe Biden, of course, the former vice president, who is leading the polls nationally. But it's going to be a tight race here in Iowa, and our North America editor, John Sopel, is at his headquarters this evening. How are they feeling over there, John?
Bernie Sanders. I'm with Bernie Sanders, not Joe Biden. I think they're feeling pretty good about everything.
Misinformation, fake news.
Fake news. I didn't know how to say it. Yes, here at Biden headquarters, they're feeling great. No, we're at Bernie Sanders headquarters. And I think they are feeling...
We'd have had to go with it all night, though. Best you come out early and tell us.
We would have loved to have known how long you could have strung us along on that one, John.
Will Christian ever forgive me for kind of saying... Anyway... look, I think they're feeling pretty good about everything. I mean, remember how close they came. You know, your previous guest was talking about how important it is to have a ground game, and essential to have people who are kind of captains at each particular precinct so that they know what to do and they know how the whole system works. And it is complicated, as you were trying to explain. But Bernie Sanders has done this before. Arguably, when the scales were tipped against him 4 years ago, some would say by the Democratic National Committee, but certainly the Hillary Clinton campaign felt that, you know, they should have won it easily, and she just squeaked through with 50.2% of the vote, and you know, Bernie Sanders had 49.8%. I think that they're feeling very, very confident. They've had the ground game. Also, Bernie Sanders has spent more money on advertising than anybody else in the Iowa race. Of course, nothing compared to Mike Bloomberg, but maybe that's something that happens further down the road. And you've just had a sense that, you know, where is their heat coming off the campaign? Bernie Sanders' campaign.
So fair to say, though, John, that for lots of Democrats, the most terrifying prospect out of the Iowa caucuses is that Bernie Sanders wins tonight and does well and is launched on a path where he looks like he's going to be the nominee, potentially.
Exactly, and you look at the success rate of Iowa for kind of presaging what will happen in the final results of who gets the nomination. Iowa has, you know, you win Iowa, there's a very good chance you're going to win the nomination. There is a terror, and I think that the centrists in the Democratic Party see this as a binary choice. You can either have electability or you can have ideology. Bernie Sanders gives you ideology, we will give you electability. And if you looked at it through the wider lens of what happened in Britain's general election only a couple of months ago, you had someone from the far left who got absolutely wiped out in the general election. However, what Sanders people would push back on is that, say, well, 4 years ago, it was a centrist who ran against Donald Trump and lost. So maybe we can rewrite the rule book as well. Maybe we can regame how elections work, bring in new people to vote. And that is what the Sanders campaign hope that they will be able to achieve. And that's why they say, look, you should not discount us because we can't win. We can win, but we can be principled. Now, there are an awful lot of hurdles and an awful lot of senior Democrats and an awful lot of people I've spoken to who say if Bernie Sanders becomes the candidate, we've lost the election. And you can see, imagine Donald Trump in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue just rubbing his hands slightly like that.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders hoping for a big night. We'll come back to you, no doubt, through the evening. John, thank you very much for that. Let's go to one of the other progressive Liberal candidates, and that is, of course, Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts. Chris Buckler is at her headquarters this evening. Interesting that she's lost a little bit of ground, Chris, in the polls in recent months, and that's because Bernie Sanders has been clawing back his base and taking those progressive voters from Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, and Christian, you can just imagine what is going on inside those rooms where caucuses are being held at the moment, because it is a bit of a fight for that left-wing vote, that progressive vote between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. You probably have people at the moment trying to persuade them to each side of that room. I was talking to one of Bernie Sanders' organisers yesterday, and he was saying actually that they'd banned food this year from the caucuses because in previous years that was almost used as a bribe to try and encourage people over this way. But actually, if you talk to Elizabeth Warren's team at the moment, they seem pretty in a position where they're pretty happy about things and the way it's all going. They might not have the cookies that are needed to encourage people to their side, but they think they have the policies. And the thing about Elizabeth Warren is she has been so active here. She has done her best to be seen. She's not been short of taking selfies with anybody who's prepared to do that, and actually really energetic at times to try and make her point that she believes that she's a good candidate to take on Donald Trump. And to some extent, let's be honest, this is all about Donald Trump and who's the best candidate to take him on. And Elizabeth Warren has that feather in her cap in that she basically says she has fought nicknames and attacks from Donald Trump in the past. She believes that message that she can go forward and take him on in an election with no fear of what Donald Trump is going to say. But I think there's an appreciation here and everywhere else that things are going to be tight tonight, particularly for that first vote. At the same time, if you look behind me, each of these candidates has a setup here where they want to be seen behind a podium, they want to be seen at a victory rally and sell whatever the result is here as a victory.
I have often wondered what the Iowa caucuses would be like with a vodka martini as opposed to cookies, but they're not even getting the dash of sugar tonight. Chris, you know, you think of the kind of different support groups that some of these candidates have, and some of them it's very distinctive. Bernie Sanders, young people love him. Joe Biden, it tends to be older, more moderate voters. What's Elizabeth Warren's core group of supporters amongst Democratic voters?
Yeah, I think truthfully they're going to hold off on the vodka martinis, but at this stage there's probably some people who'd be quite happy to have one just given the nerves are settling in. But you're right, you know, Bernie Sanders has really captured that young vote, and Elizabeth Warren is doing her best to appeal to some people there. But actually, she's also playing the fact that she is a woman, a strong female politician who perhaps reflects the current Democratic Party a bit better in her argument than Bernie Sanders. Diversity is the key in this whole election, and they believe that if they have a woman who represents the Democratic Party, they might be in a better position if they take on Donald Trump.
Interesting.
Chris Buckler at Elizabeth Warren's headquarters, thank you very much for that. It's going to be really interesting tonight to see where all these candidates finish. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to finish top of the pile. If you're Pete Buttigieg, for instance, you polled well recently, you come third.
Expectations.
Then you have a sort of launch pad into the rest of the campaign. It's not just about what happens here, of course. It's about fundraising. Money is the lifeblood of a presidential campaign. And if you do well here, the checks start to roll in.
Yeah, big expectations for Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Let's see how they do, Kasia, during the course of the evening. Of course, we'll have more later on with some results at some point from here in Iowa. Kasia, that's it for the moment.
Catty, as always, thanks so much. And the moment those results come in, we'll be straight back to Catty, Christian, John and Chris there in Iowa. So we'll have a special results programme in about 45 minutes. So do stay with us here on BBC World News for that. But now let's just bring you up to date with some of the other day's news stories. And President Xi Jinping has told his most senior team that stopping the new coronavirus from spreading is the country's most serious task. He spoke as Shanghai's stock market crashed and the US closed its doors to any new visitors from China. Well, in the last couple of hours, it's been confirmed that 425 people have died from the virus and that there are over 19,000 confirmed cases. From Hong Kong, Rupert Wingfield-Hayes sent this report.
In a Wuhan virus ward, a group of nurses and patients are singing a famous patriotic anthem. My motherland and I, they sing, are never apart. The propaganda message is not difficult to understand. In China's state media, the focus is now on uniting the country to fight the virus. Hundreds of military doctors and nurses have been arriving in Wuhan to join the battle. When our country is in difficulty, this female soldier says, it is our duty to be on the front line. China's logistical capabilities are beyond dispute. Which other country could complete a 1,000-bed hospital in less than 2 weeks? Today, that is exactly what happened as the first patients arrived. But there is an ugly side to this all-out fight against the virus. In this unverified footage, the man pinned on the ground was caught without a face mask. Spray him with disinfectant, the official shouts. In much of China, wearing a mask is now compulsory, despite doubts about their effectiveness. In this video, a whole family is being forcibly removed from their home to a waiting ambulance. Lots of videos like these are being shared to foreign websites. They show police locking an old man suspected of having the virus in his home. Do you have enough rice? The policeman says. Okay, we're chaining the door. Here, the policemen are warning a resident who has posted something about the virus on social media. Sharing any information about the virus is illegal, he tells her.
Scenes like those now can be found right across social media, and they're really fueling the sense of anxiety and fear about the coronavirus that is spreading right around the world, but nowhere more so than here in Hong Kong. People here simply do not believe they're getting a realistic picture of what is happening in Wuhan and central China. And that's why there is now a crescendo of demands that Hong Kong close its border with the mainland completely.
Hong Kong's chief executive today ordered more border crossings closed, but said some must remain open.
There were indeed more Hong Kong people crossing the border almost on a daily basis, and then they have to come back.
That was not good enough for these hospital workers, who have now voted to strike until the border is shut. Fear is even more contagious than the virus. This is the center of Shanghai, China's biggest city and economic heart. When the bill comes in for all of this, it is going to be huge. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News in Hong Kong.
You're watching this special edition of Newsday on the BBC, where we're monitoring the caucus in Iowa, of course, and we're also bringing you up to date with all the day's other news. Also coming up here on the programme, we'll have more from scientists who say that they are deeply disappointed that an experimental anti-HIV vaccine does not work. We'll be finding out what that means in the battle to stamp out AIDS.
This is the moment that millions in Iran have been waiting for. After his long years in exile, the first hesitant steps of Ayatollah Khomeini on Iranian soil.
South Africa's white government has offered its black opponents concessions unparalleled in the history of apartheid. And the ANC leader, Nelson Mandela, is to be set free unconditionally.
3, 2, a countdown to a critical moment. The world's most powerful rocket ignited all 27 of its engines at once. And apart from its power, it's this recycling of the rocket, slashing the cost of a launch, that makes this a breakthrough in the business of space travel.
2 Americans have become the first humans to walk in space without any lifeline to their spaceship. One of them called it a piece of cake.
Thousands of people have given the yachtswoman Ellen MacArthur a spectacular homecoming in the Cornish port of Falmouth after she smashed the world record for sailing solo around the world non-stop.
Hello, welcome to this special edition of Newsday, live from Iowa and London. Our main stories this hour. Well, voting is coming to a close in the Iowa caucuses, the first clear indication of who is leading the way in the race to be the Democrats' presidential candidates. And China's top leadership has admitted shortcomings in its response to the coronavirus outbreak. The number of people who've died from the virus in China has now risen to more than 400. 7 critically ill children in war-torn Yemen have flown out of the country for medical treatment. The life or death mission took 2 years to organise and is a rare moment of cooperation between the warring factions. 23 others will follow on a second plane. The UN says it's a temporary solution to reduce the suffering of Yemeni people. Our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette reports.
Saying goodbye after months of waiting in a hotel in Sana'a. Critically ill children and their parents now at last heading to the airport to take them for the life-saving treatment they so badly need. It's taken 2 years of tough negotiations to reach this point. This airfield is controlled by the Houthis. The airspace is controlled by the Saudi-led coalition. And in the midst of these warring sides are caught the littlest and most vulnerable.
Well, thanks to Lise Doucette. Now, hundreds of yaks starved to death during an unusually severe winter last year in the northeastern Indian state of Sikkim. Well, now herders and officials are concerned about the fate of the remaining population. Only 76,000 yaks are left in India.
अब हामीले याकलाई नै बचाएर चाहिँ अब हाम्रो जिन्दगी चलाउनु पर्छ अब हाम्रो पेशा नै यही हो याकलाई चाहिँ अब हामीले मसाउनु भएन बचाउनै पर्यो किनभने अब याक छैन भने हाम्रो अब कमाइ नै छैन पेशै छैन
Last winter of 2018 because of the unprecedented and prolonged winter snowfall we had a very sad incidence of yak deaths. As summer temperature rises, they move higher up the altitude. That is for over a period of 6 months. Again, as winter sets in, they move downwards, and that takes about 6 months' time. They are in the lower belts. But last year, what happened was the snow was unprecedented. All of a sudden, it took place, and the road was totally blocked. There was no way to gain access to the area where the yaks were left.
हैन त्यो त अब यस्तो नि अब घाँस खानु पाएन भने 1 महिना 10 दिन यस्तो घाँस खानु नपाएर पुरा भोकले अब हामीले पनि त्यतिखेर उनीहरूको मुखमा पुर्याउनु सकेन, हामी पनि त हिँड्नु सकेन, यति हिउँ छ। अब फेरि अब त्यही सिजन आउँदैछ। अब तर यस्तो हो नि त कोही साल चाहिँ हिउँ गतिलो पर्छ, ठुलो बडा ज्यादा 2 फिट 3 फिट पर्छ, कोही साल कम आउँछ। अब ज्यादा परेको बेलामा चाहिँ अन्त त्यतिखेर चाहिँ अब हामीले पनि सक्दैन, उनीहरूलाई रेगुलर गर्नु सक्दैन, त्यहाँदेखि अन्त मर्छ।
So now we get to know that the yak herders are often exposed to the wrath of nature every year, and last winter has been a very good lesson for us. Now we are trying to give them supportive measures. We will be distributing necessary inputs in the form of feed and fodder block, which is very essential to support them during the winter. The yaks are very intrinsic to our culture and tradition. For humans to survive, yaks have to survive.
The difficult plight of the yak there. Now, don't forget, at the top of the hour, we'll be back with more results. The full results programme of the Iowa caucuses with Cassie Christian and Mike Embley will be here in London. Bye-bye from me.